Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to do actually a follow-up on a video that I did before, where I mentioned that I might do a video on video game properties that I think could be successfully adapted into film. Now, just for the sake of the actual argument, I'm not going to use any video games that have already been adapted. So Assassin's Creed and World of Warcraft, those are obviously out. Anything else like Super Mario Brothers and stuff like that, those are all out. At the same time, I'm going to try and stay away from already established properties, comic book properties, so on and so forth, because those started out in different mediums. I'm going to try and stay with properties that are specifically video games, and they started out in video games, and that's where the core audience is. So with that, let's move into my first one here, which is the BioShock franchise. Now, the ones that I would personally go with is either the first BioShock or BioShock Infinite. I would say Infinite more than the first one because Infinite has more well-defined characters with Booker DeWitt, and the thing with that is that game had such a good story, and the ending. And again, I'm not going to give away too much about the game because if you've played it, you know how good it is from a story and a gameplay perspective and everything like that. And the ending of it is so amazing. And if you haven't, then you should go play it. You should find it and you should play it because it's an amazing game. But I think that story could be adapted to screen very well, and I think you could do it similar to, I think it would be very similar to a Chris Nolan film, where it's kind of like an Inception, that kind of idea, because the plot of the game does involve jumping around into different realities and stuff like that, and you journey through this with Booker and Anna, and it's really really interesting in the game how they kind of explain it and how everything works. And just the visuals and everything with the city of Columbia and all of that stuff, it looks amazing. And I think you could do a very, very good adaptation of that onto screen. And like I said, you'd have something similar to an Inception in terms of the way that it's constructed, where there's certain explanations that have to happen among the world in order for certain things to make sense. And then by the end of the movie, you're hit with the whammy, essentially. And again, I'm not going to go too into that. And then there's also the original BioShock, which again has a very good story, but it's kind of it's a bit different in the sense that the protagonist is essentially silent. There's not a lot of character there, which is what people have cited with Master Chief and some other video game heroes, is the idea that they're too quiet, they don't have enough personality. So they might shy away from that a little bit, but Infinite, I don't think you could. I don't think you could make that argument because Booker DeWitt is a very defined character by the end of the game. So that would be one. That would be a huge pick, and I would love to see that. I know they had a BioShock film in development a very long time ago, around the time the first game came out, which I think was like 2007, and ultimately nothing really came of it. And then it just kind of fizzled out. But I think you could get more interest in it again, especially if they have a new installment in the franchise that's very good. But I think the best one currently that is out that would offer the best chance for a good film is BioShock Infinite. Now, let's go forward into another franchise that people love, which is God of War. Now, God of War is one of those franchises that it's gotten better with each game, almost, except for Ascension, which is in there. That was a little weird. But, jumping from God of War 3 to God of War, which is really God of War 4, it's really, really a stark change in the character and everything like that. And you know what? You could actually start with the story in God of War 4 and then just kind of do flashbacks, and then maybe you can go back later on and do some prequel work or something like that if you didn't want to start with the first game. But the first game has a great story as well, where you have Kratos, who's this Spartan, and his family dies, and it's his fault, and he gets the all the tragedy, it has all the elements of a Greek epic, like an Odyssey or an Iliad in a sense. and the mortals struggle against the gods essentially. And then by the end of the third game, you get the retribution, but the ultimate retribution. But that first game where he goes up against Ares is great, and I think that you could very easily adapt that into a screenplay, and then I think you could also you could expand on it even more in that first one and just kind of flesh out the world a bit more. Maybe introduce some elements that would come up in a later film. I don't think you could fit. I don't think you should fit uh, God of War in the first three games into one film. I think you should split it up at least into two movies, probably three. I think three would be the best. But that's another one that's out there that I think is ripe for picking up for a film. I know that they've had again. I think they've had a film in development hell for a number of years, but I don't think that it's currently getting any traction. Now, this is one that came to mind very quickly, and this is, it goes along those lines of great westerns, and it's Red Dead Redemption. Now, I would start off with Red Dead Redemption 2 and then do Red Dead Redemption after that, because that's how they go chronologically. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great story, and there are some choice elements in it, but I think you can iron those out in a film version very easily and make it work. But you don't see that many great westerns anymore. You really don't. And honestly, Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 had some of the best western stories I had ever seen in any medium, especially 2. 2, you get so attached to the character of Arthur, and watching him, kind of watch all of his friends kind of dwindle down and his relationship with John Marsden and his relationship with Dutch and all that. And I think it would make a great film. And then you just kind of see like all of their worlds kind of just spiraling out of control. It's almost like this. It's weird. Ironically, the studio's Rockstar. It kind of feels like the life of a rock star, where you start out where you get on top, and then you just spiral down out of control and in this insane in this insane stupor and just hit rock bottom. But Red Dead Redemption would be a really good adaptation, or a really good video game to adapt to film. And there would be, again, you don't really have a lot of westerns, so you would kind of own that market, especially if you went with the idea of doing a film like that and hiring a bunch of A-listers and getting a good writing crew on board, and just kind of taking the great parts of Red Dead Redemption and just putting them into a 2.5 hour movie. A 2.5 hour movie, I think you could cover a majority of at least the main plot line of Red Dead Redemption, or Red Dead Redemption 2. So then we kind of move past that. Now, this is one that's kind of recent, but I really did like the game, and it's somewhat historically accurate, and it does leave a bit at the end, but just based on the main quest lines, is Kingdom Come Deliverance. Now, this game went through a bit of I don't even want to call it a controversy, where people were pissed at the game studio. It was from a game studio, I believe, in Scandinavia, and they wanted to do, or Bohemia, and they wanted to do a game that was historically accurate to 1324 Poland. And they didn't include black people because there weren't a lot of black people in Poland back then. There probably wasn't almost any. And people got pissed because apparently there weren't any black people in the game, even though they wanted to make it historically accurate. And the studio then royally told them to go screw themselves, which, kudos to them. If you're going to make a game, and if you want to make it a certain way, you make it a certain way. And you don't let other people tell you how to make that game, if that game is being made how you want it to be made and people are excited for it. And again, the game sold very well, and I bought it. I played it. I thought that was one of the best narrative games I think I've played in a very long time. I would say it's superior in narrative form to probably a majority. I would put it close to the Elder Scrolls games in terms of that. Obviously it doesn't have the magical elements because it's supposed to be somewhat realistic, but it is. But it does give you great character moments where you have Henry from Skalitz, or Henry of Skalitz, um, and on all the stuff, and he had all the stuff. His family gets murdered, and then he goes on this long quest and becomes a knight and all this stuff. And it's one of those great kind of rags to riches stories. It's very interesting. It has a lot of that medieval flavor. The dialogue is very, very well written. The interactions between the characters feels organic. It's not really clunky. And I think it would be very easy to adapt something like that, especially if you got, this kind of goes for most of these. If you got the same writing crew that did the games on to do a film, I think that would be amazing, and it would work out even better because these are people that know the characters inside out. And then on top of that, Kingdom Come Deliverance does leave room for sequels and stuff like that, because it ends on a I don't want to say a cliffhanger, but it ends on it has an open ending, where you're supposed to be moving forward essentially. So, even though that's a recent game, I think that would actually make a very good adaptation, and I think it should be picked up, at least picked up, so that the studio could take a look at it. Now, moving on to this is kind of my personal choice, and this is it would be more of a movie for kids, and this is kind of a nostalgia trip for me, and that's Spyro the Dragon. Now, they recently came out with the Spyro Reignited trilogy. I did play all three of them. I loved all three of them. It reminded me so much of when I was a kid. On the original PlayStation, I had all three of the original games. But the thing that makes me think that this would make a very good children's film is, first of all, I wouldn't follow the story of the first game because it's very, very bland, unless you kind of incorporated it with some other stuff. But I would follow the story of the second game, because the second game, honestly, it has the strongest story elements out of all three of the games. And I think it would be very, very good if you took that game and you fleshed everything out, because that also introduces a lot of the extenuous side characters. You have Alora, and Hunter, and the fairies and stuff like that, and then you also have Ripto, who's the main villain, and you have why am I drawing a blank? The bear. The bear I was thinking of, it's Moneybags. Moneybags is his name. But you introduce all those side characters that kind of become mainstays in the when you go into the third game. And I think that if you fleshed all that stuff out, if you did a little bit more fleshing out between the characters, I think it would work very well. And I think you should stay in the 3D animation. I don't think blending live action and animation would be a good idea. I think you should stay with the 3D, stay with the kiddie stuff, kind of make it almost a little bit kind of the aesthetic of like a Toy Story or something like that. Where you would have that kind of look. And the best part about it is that a lot of the people that worked on Spyro, and both the Reignited and the original trilogy, are all veteran voice actors, and they could very easily do a film script. In fact, Tom Kenny, who voices Spyro, is also the same guy who voices SpongeBob SquarePants. And he's done many other voice work over the years too. That's just his most notable. But he's used to doing stuff like that. So I think you could do that very easily. And I don't think it would cost a whole lot to produce some kind of a 3D animated movie like that. And as long as you have a decent writers who can kind of flesh stuff out and do stuff a little better, I think you could have a hit kids franchise on your hands. And you have at least 2, maybe 3 movies worth with those original 3 games before you have to go into original content territory. But those are just some of my thoughts on some games that I thought would make really good adaptations. Put in the comments any games that you really enjoy that deserve adaptations into film, or possibly game franchises that deserve another look if they've already had a film adaptation. And remember, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?